All right, and right before we kick it off, does anyone have a fun story or anything they want to share? Something that they might have been inspired by today or a nice thought? There you go, Daniel.
Hello, everyone. I had this morning my first remote healing experience. And that was a guy I met through a newsletter last week who's helping me with some breath work. And then he gave me a remote healing session. And it gave me some very deep insights to my relations with my mother. I don't know if it's fun, but at least I think it's very, it has given me a lot of thought. This is maybe, what time is it now? It's about 10 hours ago. And yeah, I can really see he hit some really poignant things in that session. So that's my great insight for the day.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so to drop into this session, no one shared anything with me that they wanted to offer, so I'm going to take that mantle up and we can do just another round of breath work because I love it and this is a good excuse for me to get it in during the day. But this one might be fun standing up. So I noticed most of you are sitting down. We probably spend a lot of time sitting down. So here's an invitation to stand up if you would like. This one's going to be a little bit more active and warm ourselves up a little bit. One of the ways of getting our chest open to make sure we can really bring in a lot of air into our lungs is within each in-breath, we're going to expand out our hands, open up the chest, be wide, make a big posture, and then breathe out and be very active with it. So it's like, the more exaggerated you can make it, the better. Try not to hit anything or get hurt. So make sure your surroundings are clear. We're going to do about 60, 70 of these breaths again. And after that final out breath, don't push all the air out, just a nice relaxed out breath. Then we can sit down and just sit with it for about a minute before we dive in today. Do we all like this?
Yes.
Love it. Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm going to put on this super chill music, which is going to make no sense for this theme, but we're going to do it anyway. Because I didn't prepare any other music, so bear with me. Here we are. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense, but whatever, we're going to do it anyway. So, big breaths. Open up, goes. We're about halfway. Keep the big breaths. Fill your lungs up. For now, these last 20, 30, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit.
So, habla con los hombres de Senapria.
Sí,
Right. So maybe we have time for one share. If anyone wants to share anything that came through to them or that they would like to share before we kick off today. We'll get one. I know one of you has something wonderful to share with us. All right. One future. Oh, there we go. Tell me.
Yes, I just want to be grateful for this moment, for you to remind me to connect my mind, my heart, and my body.
And that's exactly what we want to be bringing to these sessions. The outer space is a little bit more heady, a little bit less heart, but we're still going to try to find that balance. I saw most of you are on the inner space yesterday, so that's kind of where we ground in and get ready for more of this outer space exploration. So there's a lot to cover today, and that was a little bit more of an active introduction to this so that we have a lot of energy to carry us through all the things that we're going to want to cover here. So without further ado, we're going to kick this off. If you wanted the music, there it is. FYI. Today's journey, where are we going? First, we're going to start off at the point. Everyone loves starting there. It makes a lot of sense. Then we're going to go and introduce the game guide in section 0. So that's the first thing we're going to cover. We're going to have a breakout section at that point. The breakout section, they're all about, sometimes they're going to do them as a group, but if it feels like there's a lot of discussion that wants to happen, then we're going to actually break out into breakout groups. So each one of these is going to be ad hoc based off of the energy of the group, how we're feeling. So it might stay as a whole, we might break out. So at each one of these junction points, we're going to ask the whole group if we should do a breakout or not. So that'll be our moment to kind of signal that together. After that first breakout, we're going to get into some key quests. So that's stuff that we're going to be doing in this particular outer space group. After that, we're going to talk about this constitutional guardians. What are they? One more breakout group to discuss some of the quests and guardians that we were discussing. And then final is some exploration groups, formerly known as working groups, but that's boring. And we're on an exploration here. So that's where we're headed. Cool, so there's our format. Any questions right now before we dive in? Awesome. What is the point? The point is thriving within social and planetary boundaries. I saw a Netflix show recently, and it was, I forget what it was called, something Boundaries with David Attenborough. It was really beautiful. I'm sure most of you, though, are pretty familiar with planetary boundaries and how we're not really living within them, and how our current, political and nation-state paradigms are inept at solving any of these crises that we're facing. After decades of understanding the problem, we're not really heading in any proper direction. So that's really what Seeds, at least for me, and the totality of what I'm doing here is kind of about. Is creating alternative economic systems to address how do we create civilization to live within our ecological and social boundaries. So I want to keep this in mind. So everything we're building is building off of this foundation, because there's no point in having an economic or governance system if our planet is unlivable. So always what we're starting with is the foundation of our ecology and our living systems and how we can best manage those. That is the root word where economy comes from, after all, is how to manage a household. And our household is planet Earth itself. So what good is an economy if it can't properly steward the planet that we're living on and sharing? So that is the entire point. Questions, comments, concerns, amendments before we keep flowing? I'm going to ask this at the end of every slide, so if you have anything. Nope, easy. We all share the same point. Cool, we can dive into some of the fun stuff. The game guide, show of hands. How many of you have read the game guide? Ooh, excellent, good, yes, awesome. And this is going to be fairly easy. So one of our main tasks here in the outer space is taking the game guide from version 0.1, well, more like 0.9, whatever, where it is right now up to something worth ratifying by the citizens. So we're going to go over this section by section, evolve each one of the sections through experiments, test them out, explore them ourselves, and get this guide ready for go live and launching this economic system out into the world. So I'm going to go over section 0 of the game guide today. So for those of us who are following this journey online, I haven't quite read it yet. I'm just going to introduce this and then we can have a talking point on it. So section 0 is here, talking about the initial goals and challenges, and setting the stage for what this game is really about. This could be something that we first discuss is the use of the word game at all. So maybe we can do that in the breakout group. I know that's something that everyone is, it's a polarizing point, whether we call it a game or an economic system or what we actually call this thing. I dedicated a whole section to it, why play a game, but wow, there's a lot of cross outs here. So I don't know, I think people didn't like that, eh? It's the first time I'm coming to this in a little bit. Yeah, so anyway, we'll take that on in the breakout group. So section 0. All right, so introducing the game. So it's for 2 to infinity players. It's meant to be multi-generational. What does that mean? It's an infinite game. And what are infinite games? Games that have no predetermined end. So the point of Seeds isn't to conquer the planet or build an empire, have any predefined task. The point of Seeds is to create an economic system that's a steady state economy, something that can carry humanity forward through time immemorial, such as civilizations of yesteryear. But we do have some initial challenges we're wanting to address, and these do have predetermined outcomes, such as the extinction of species. We've succeeded when we stop extincting species at the rate that we're extincting them right now. We'll exceed even further if we're creating living conditions for new species to emerge and thrive. Ecological destruction, if we can reverse and halt that, et cetera, et cetera. You guys already read this, so I'm not getting into it. But anyway, section 0, we're introducing what we're actually doing here. So this is something that I would love for us to, exactly as we see Anna-Lois doing here, to come in and challenge. Are these, the most important tasks that we want to take on? So this is something I want to leave with you all this week. I'm kind of skipping ahead, but our work this week is actually to go through section 0 and do exactly what you see here, is leave a lot of different comments, suggest changes and upgrades, and we're going to do this section by section. But anyway, so the first thing doing this week is this what the point of the game is. Are we missing anything? Is this short-sighted, etc. The same thing with our initial goals. So these are our challenges. Our goals is how do we actually address those challenges? What are we aiming to do here? I have a big focus on food. I think that's really important. So you see that throughout the game guide. As I personally see, if we change our food systems, which is at the foundation of any civilization, is how we nourish ourselves. It's how we meet our direct needs. So I know that food is the foundation of any livable civilization. Thrivable in that sense. So anyway, you see that throughout here. I have a big focus on that. I wanted to frame that. But the same question I have for you is the initial goals. Are these the appropriate goals for us to be setting as a group? We elaborate a little bit more on this in the Constitution itself as we unpack some of these goals and the design criteria. And I think most of you have read the Constitution, but right now we're just trying to summarize it. So again, go through here, question it if any of these don't feel right or feel too short-sighted. I'll pause here in case there's any immediate feedback on these 2 sections, because I'm kind of just running through this pretty quickly, but I'll stop anyway. Does anyone have any immediate thoughts on the challenges / goals that we're addressing here?
I had a comment on the point slide, right? So we are getting inspiration from donut economy, right? So are we going to kind of go through that some more, or dive deeper a little bit? Because I really think it connects to what we're talking about.
I shared it in Telegram. One of the groups we're allied with, Ubiquity University, they're working with Kate Raworth and put on a course where she's teaching donut economics and thrivable civilizations and all sorts of wonderful, wonderful stuff. And we have a discount where we can get that course either half off or free. So finances are any problem. So I don't think we're gonna cover donut economics too much in this, because there's already awesome resources to dive into that. However, one of the reading materials is to get into her book, Donut Economics. But if either of you want to attend that course, just send me a PM. I can send you the information for that.
Yeah, so the point is that I wanted to make is this word thriving, you know, because it can cause confusion sometimes, you know. When you think thriving, sometimes people think, oh, I want to be thriving, and no matter if the other people are not thriving. So the only way to be truly thriving is if the whole planet is thriving. Otherwise, you're not thriving. You are, you know, having a profit, right? So the only way to really thrive is thriving together. So that's why this word was very important to me, and I think it connects perfectly with the point, right?
Yeah, and elaborating on that a little bit more with, you know, what Annalos has brought up with thrivability. So that's the ability to thrive, not just the ability for us to thrive, which is, it's a myopic thinking anyway, to see, you know, nature and other living systems and us as separate anyway. I think that's a whole paradigm that needs reshifting. It's not like we're extincting other species, we're extincting parts of ourselves, right? But either way, thrivability is the ability to thrive. So it's a design criteria. It's like, is this system designed to be able to thrive itself and lend thriving to other things as well? So it's not an inward focus. Am I thriving? It's, am I creating the conditions for other life to thrive as well? So that's what thrivability is, the ability to thrive.
Yeah, and that's why you can only say that a company or an organization is thrivable, not thriving, because it's only going to be thriving when everyone else is thriving. So you can get to the point where you are thrivable. So you would be thriving if everyone else would also be thriving. So yeah, so thank you.
Ooh, and if you want the deck, I will share that with you all here as well. Awesome, and then we'll just keep flowing. Current landscape coordination. This is worth unpacking, because I think this is, you know, very first principle. What are we actually trying to accomplish here? We're trying to accomplish how to coordinate at scale. And I like thinking from this first principles consideration, because we're not thinking of creating money necessarily. Money is a tool to support coordination. So it's ultimately where money came from. You know, money came because they needed to coordinate across time and space, primarily to build empires. And how do they do that? They did that with little trinkets, right? So that's where initially money came from, is armies didn't want to have to carry all the food and supplies and housing with them. They would much rather carry a bag of trinkets that they can pay people for food, supplies, etc. And that's where taxes came in, because people didn't actually need this money. They weren't bartering sheep and pigs against each other. They had gift economies. We don't speak about this. Economists kind of ignore this. So they needed to get people to accept these trinkets. So empires started enforcing taxation so that people had to accept their trinkets, and they needed to get trinkets, so they sold food to the military and provide housing for the military, etc. So it's kind of like the foundation of money. But ultimately, why I tell you that is because they're trying to solve a coordination problem. They wanted to build empires and they needed to coordinate that empire. So money was a tool to support coordination, right? It's also where I think money gets such a bad rap. Because it came to coordinate empire building and all the devastating things that came from that. So people, you know, wrongly, I think, blame money as the problem rather than the energy that was coming behind money. Because all money really does is it helps scale coordination. Now, coordination could be good or bad. We can coordinate to build empires and create ecocide, which is what we're doing right now, and genocide and wiping out cultures and people and doing terrible, terrible things, which is also why seed isn't necessarily inherently beautiful. And I say that because this is just going to help us scale coordination. But if all the members of seeds help use these powerful technology to scale coordination to be more degenerative, well, that's their choice and their will. So, seeds itself as a technology is really just a tool to scale coordination. We try to override that by building in a lot of things, and that's what we as a group is going to be doing, is we want to inject into the foundations to make sure that it's going to be regenerative by default, so that it's going to be very difficult to make it degenerative, even if citizens go haywire. So that's kind of one of our design criteria here is, how do we make it so it will be regenerative, even if the participants themselves aren't wanting to be, which is the exact opposite of our current economic world. Is most people want to be regenerative, but the net outcome of our economic systems is degenerative. So it doesn't matter the intentions of the people involved in that system, the system is still destroying our planet. So we want to do exactly the opposite, which is also another point where seeds comes from. Is it talks about better than free, and it talks a lot about like financial, profit motive incentives. That's very intentional, because if we can drive that profit-making motive, which is very degenerative in our current world, but we could rewire that to be regenerative by default, that could be a very powerful tool and bridge. It's kind of like a jujitsu move. You use the momentum of your opponent against them. You don't fight them, you just redirect it. And I think that's something very beautiful that we can learn here and apply in a lot of our ways. Is let's not try to fight the prevailing system, but let's adapt what the prevailing system is doing and redirect the monumental energy of that system towards the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. I say that because there's massive groups with like degrowth, for example, that's saying, let's fight growth. Let's try to halt growth. And I see that energy, but it's always an energy of against, how do we slow down, this train moving in the wrong direction. While I want to, rewire growth, we don't want to halt growth, we want to redirect it. Rather than growth for, quantitative metrics, growing GDP and more stuff. We want to redirect growth towards restoring landscapes, growing our social connection, growing our emotional intelligence, etc. There's still a lot of growth humanity needs to grow through, but it's going to be more qualitative growth. The analogy here is more like an organism, as we're a child to an adult, we're physically growing, our mass is growing. But once we reach maturity in the physical size, we still have a lot of growth left to do. We're not mentally mature, emotionally mature, spiritually mature. We haven't matured in our purpose or passion. So, humans never stop growing in that sense. So I don't think our economies either will stop growing. We just need to redirect that growth imperative. Anyway, cool. So what are we doing? We're coordinating around how we grow. It's the foundation of how I want to, frame this. So that way we can look at things like money as a tool to help scale coordination. But as you probably are hearing sometimes in the chat, we're launching this thing called gratitude tokens, which is another tool that complements money as a way of coordinating. We have these things called contribution scores, which we're going to get into pretty heavily here within this section, which is also about coordinating. This is another way of decentralizing how we coordinate around certain goals and objectives. So anyway, our big problems with humanity right now are in coordination problems. And that's what we're also trying to solve.
And by the way, the scores are also, sorry, Reiki. Just wanted to say that the scores are also a kind of currency, right? It's a non-transferable currency that carries reputation information, but it's another kind of currency. So we are developing many different currencies to track different kinds of resources, and that's to allow coordination at scale. So this is very beautiful. Currency actually comes from the word current see. So you can see the currents, the flows of resources. So we can coordinate much better when we have information, when we can track all that, the movement of the resources. So yeah.
Any other thoughts and comments around coordination as a foundation? Cool. Yeah, so someone's challenging my increasing the complexity with the use of upgrading, which is probably better. Why say increasing the complexity? Because our civilizations have become more complex been at least where the current trajectory of civilization's headed. If you track this one back in time, ignoring all of the really complex and beautiful indigenous cultures that we've wiped off the face of this planet very terribly. But if you look at our particular trajectory of civilization, the dominant one, it's been increasing in complexity. We now have a global civilization of 8 billion humans. Our challenges are global in scale. Before, if a civilization collapsed, it was very isolated. When the Mayan civilization collapsed, it was isolated to Central America. It didn't cause a global collapse. But right now, if our global civilization started to collapse, there's nowhere on planet that could be, immune from such a catastrophe. So why, I'm focusing on increasing the complexity is because as ecosystems mature, they get more complex in order to handle more information and be able to do beautiful things with all that more information. So I think that's also something that's really powerful with this technology that we're building. Is we're designing it in a way to be able to handle more complexity and handle that beautifully. But we can abstract away a lot of that complexity into protocols and all the things we're going to be getting into later without trying to have all that complexity up front. So that's another one of our challenges here is how do we build incredibly complex and beautiful and integrated systems where the front end of it, where people are engaging with it, it can be incredibly simple. For an example, we can have the gratitude token. On the front end, it's really, really simple. All you do is click acknowledge when you're feeling gratitude, that's it. But on the back end of it, we can get really complex with how it's actually designed. We could say, well, we only want to give people 10 times to be able to spend gratitude so they don't abuse it. We want to track it so that if people are sending gratitude just right back and forth to each other, we cancel it out after the third time so that two friends don't just try to hack the system with giving gratitude to each other. We can do all sorts of really complex things on the back end to achieve the aims that we're trying to get at while keeping it really, really simple and intuitive on the front end. So that's what I mean by the ability to increase the complexity of our coordination tools so that they can handle the complexity of our civilization today. I'll pause there. Any thoughts on anything that was shared so far?
I just have a fundamental thought on the direction this is all going, where it's being said that we have destroyed the planet, and I don't think that's correct. I think that all the negative outcomes are inherent in the current systems, and they're always going to go there. But it's not really helpful to take on that blame, basically, and to feel guilty about whatever.
Yeah, unless a couple of you that I don't know of are a few thousand years old, I don't know if blame is necessarily appropriate because none of us were alive when these systems were designed or put in motion. So I think that's a good point. And I also, I put that here. I think this is probably worth stating again because it's that important. It's right here. So this is not an us versus them game. I really want to avoid that story here. So it's not like a 99% versus the 1%, like the evil banking cabal versus, the regenerators, that story. It's still a story of separation where there's some, evil group and we've got to bring them down. I like, sure, from a spiritual perspective, I'd say that's just a totally false story because then we're just buying back into separation. But more from a practical perspective, they weren't alive. They didn't create this game. They were born into it the same as all of us, and they're just players playing a game. And I like looking at it that way because they are good players. They played the game really well. In fact, the game was one of exploitation and wealth accumulation, and they did that well. I don't think that they're necessarily evil people. They're just good players. So why don't we give them a new game to play? And maybe they can play this game really well too. And having met a lot of people who succeeded well in the old game, I know they have beautiful hearts, and they are looking for a new game to play. So I think that's something else that we can set up here in Seeds is not design this as something that's, it's the regenerators versus the evil bankers. They're bad. They can't be part of this. But it's, meant to be designed to, attract all walks of life and not be some, cultish like community. Sorry for my words there. It's just sometimes that could be called this. But something that is, very open and engaging with all sorts of different types of people. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to be able to achieve what we're setting out here to do. So I really like to address that narrative that, if we ever catch us in us versus them thinking that we can throw that away because, no one alive today, as far as I'm aware, designed the systems that we're living in today. But, you know, I'm just throwing at you all my value perspectives here, but just wanting to share with you some of the thinking that I'm holding right now. All right, what are we launching? What is Seeds? Seeds is a minimal viable economy. So that's our goal here. So we want to get something that's the compressed, as basic as we can get it, but that's encompassing as an economy ought to be. So that's why, unfortunately, this is still 160 pages or something long, but we still want to make it as small as possible and be an integrated economy that people can opt into. Because once we're done with this, what we do want to say to other people is, great, you feel like the prevailing economic systems aren't serving you, here's an alternative. Because that's what the cop-out typically is when capitalism, you know, gets a bad rap. It's like, yeah, capitalism's bad, but, you know, communism's worse. You know, we don't have any better alternative. We want to be able to hijack that story by saying, well, actually, there is a viable alternative, and it's right here. Cool. So what are some of our game pieces? Last thing, and then we'll move on to the rest of the stuff. So this is what we're really going to be breaking into, is what are all the different tools that we have to help us build these new civilizations. So some of you are pretty familiar with all the different applications we have, you know, like the global passport, the light wallet, things like that. Cool. Lots of people are moving stuff. Y'all are weird. Don't do that. But I know it's weird because when you're on mobile, it kind of messes with you. We have decentralized exchanges, so we're going to be launching the Seed Swap here soon, where you can swap between different currencies. Cool. We have the Do, which most of you are familiar with. Something we're going to be doing in this group is launching our own Do as we go through the organization side. So Renaissance Explorers will be its own. We get to go through that process, but a little bit more on that here in a bit. We have marketplaces and a lot of different applications that are all coming on here. So applications are just the interface with how you engage with Seeds. Like Seeds is a blockchain. You don't really engage with it directly unless you're a nerd. You typically engage with it through an application, which there are many. And that's something worth stating. You know, Seeds is kind of like the internet, where applications are like websites to it. So the global passport is not Seeds. It's like one website on Seeds. But that's why what you do on the global passport is the same stuff as you do on the light wallet, the same stuff you do on the Do. You use the exact same account. It's your same, you know, Seeds account. It's all your same information. It's just different applications for accessing it, right? And that's something cool. That's a side benefit of this whole Web3. That's what a lot of people call this revolution happening, is that you could have one account. You know, you have one account for going to the Do. You have the same sign-on for the light wallet and all the other marketplaces you might access. So it does have a promise of simplifying our life. For today, we've got a million passwords for a million different websites. It's overwhelming. The promise here is that you might have one digital avatar that represents all your, yep, that's a rabbit hole. I'll stop there. Cool. So here's some of our basic foundational pieces. We have different types of accounts. First, we have individual accounts. We have organization accounts, we have regional accounts, and then we have system accounts. Why is this important? Is because then we can program different meanings behind different accounts. So since individual accounts are different from organizational accounts, we can give different rewards for people versus different rewards for businesses. And the same thing applies for regions. So I want to question if we need any more basic account types. Is there any like basic categories of participants in the Seeds world that require their own account? I'm not sure, I don't think so, but we might have missed one. But this is one of the foundational building blocks, because since they're different types of accounts, we can program different things behind them. Currently, these are the different accounts that belong in each one. So each organization account has 5 different levels. So similar to individuals that have visitor, resident, citizen, where they can evolve, we have the same type of reputation system for organizations. So they start up as regular organizations. Let me make this bigger because it's probably small for all of you and nobody told me that. And this is something else. I'm kind of exploring all the different things that we're going to be doing. Is we need to be defining really well what it means to be regenerative or regular versus reputable, sustainable, regenerative, thrivable. So this is something we're going to be exploring in this group, is what does it mean to be a thrivable organization versus just a sustainable one? You know, what are we wanting to encourage organizations to do? because this is one of those systemic tipping points. Is currently in capitalism, there's no, I mean, typically there's disincentives for doing regenerative practices. You're not really rewarded when you pay your employees fair. You're certainly not rewarded when you pay people all the way down your supply chain a fair wage either. Typically, the market treats that as, you know, you're not being as efficient, you have a higher price, and you're going to lose out on market share. You're certainly not rewarded when you're going to use biodegradable plastics instead of just the crap plastic that I see all over my river that causes me to be depressed every weekend when I walk out there. So this is the problem, is at the heart of capitalism, the incentives are all backwards. So this is where we get to rewire them. We get to bake in incentives into the foundational economic layer that can encourage the use of biodegradable plastics over, you know, regular plastic, right? And all sorts of things like that. Cool. So this is, I'm getting into this because these are the foundational pieces of how we can start rethinking how our economy is designed and how we distribute value amongst our economy for certain behaviors.
Question, Ricky. Will the constitutional guardians be a special kind of account in the future, or they are just regular citizens that have this badge, or how do you see this?
Yeah, on our agenda today is going over the constitutional guardians, but it is a badge. And what a badge is the ability to give all sorts of different types of powers and abilities and rights and rewards to any one of these account types. So an individual, for example, holding the constitutional guardian, which we'll get into a bit later, badge will give it certain powers and rights to be able to do certain things. So this is where we get to upgrade each one of these different account types. And we can create all sorts of different badges, and we can have a lot of fun with this, all the way from what we were just talking about to maybe, you know, one region wants to create a motherhood badge because that region's decided, hey, motherhood is a contribution to our society. Why aren't we just paying for that? So she doesn't have to worry about making a living. She can have a motherhood badge, and for the first, you know, 2 years or whatever, she gets to hold this badge. And during that time, she gets X pay and X abilities and blah, blah, blah. So each region gets to design different types of badges that they want throughout their community, right? So that could be fun stuff that we can get into. We have different types of tokens, right? And then all a token is it's just a data set. So you can think of a token as just an Excel sheet. It's just things moving across, right? So anything could be a token from that sense. It's not just like a cryptocurrency as a token. So all sorts of things like governance token, for example, we have voice token. So who gets to have voice? We have these coordination points. So all the contribution scores are technically tokens that are being gained and earned, right? You know, some tokens can be purchased and sold. Other tokens cannot be purchased or sold. For example, our governance tokens cannot be purchased or sold because we don't want to create oligarchies. Okay, never mind, that's my value perspective. I don't want to create oligarchies. So I don't think that governance tokens can be purchased or sold. What I mean by oligarchy plutocracy is just governance by a minority, a wealthy minority. And if governance can be bought, then what we're saying is the more wealthy you are, the more voice you have. This is an unfortunate design of a lot of crypto economic systems. But it's something that we've baked into seeds to say that the governance tokens cannot be purchased. They can only be earned. So that voice is given by people who are contributing to the system, opposed to people who just happen to have a lot of wealth.
That's one very good design principle for currency design. When you separate reputation tokens from resource tokens, right? For currency tokens and regular, because if you are able to purchase and sell reputation, they don't bind to identity. You know, reputation tokens should be able to bind to your identity. And if you can just change your identity by buying new reputation or selling your reputation or losing your reputation from 1 second to the next, then it's a bad carrier for the reputation information. So that's why we usually don't buy and sell reputation, and it's very important. They are kind of electro and magnetic kind of currency. They are perpendicular, so you don't mix them because it's bad, you know, bad design, you know.
Ooh. Okay, how are we all doing? Because I'm feeling that that was a lot of information all delivered at one point. So are we wanting to shift to the next agenda, or do we want to keep flowing with me kind of diving into this? Or do we want to take and finish this, next session as everyone's had a chance to read it and give feedback. So give me a thumbs up icon if you want to just keep flowing until we get done with section 0, or give me a hand wave icon if you want to move on to the next agenda item for today. I'm seeing mostly thumbs up, so we're going to keep flowing. I see Justin, though, with a hands up, so I'll pass it to him for a moment.
I wanted to know, like, okay, so as we're kind of here and we're flowing, what should we be, like, what's the frame of reference that we should be holding or having? And so what I mean by that is, like, I feel both like I have questions, I feel like there's a call to action. I feel like there's a call to communication, but I'm also trying to take all this information in. So I wonder, like, how can we frame this moment or this type of process that we're in so that I can know, maybe we can know how to best relate to it. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally get it. So maybe I did that a little bit poorly. The framing is we're trying to create a new type of economy. What I was going over just here is the different pieces. These are the different building blocks and tools that we currently have at our disposal to be able to build different types of civilizations. So that was kind of the introduction here. It's like you're opening up a board game as you get home. You kind of take out all the pieces, and all at once it seems a little bit overwhelming, but you learn about each one of the different pieces that you have. And then slowly over time, you kind of understand the pieces a bit more. So it is going to feel a little bit chaotic, like learning every game kind of feels at the very beginning. But right now we're just introducing all the different pieces, what we have, what the different pieces actually do, so we can start mapping them out in our mind and understand what we have. Is that helpful?
Can I add to that, Raiki? Because I think I understand one thing that Justin is meaning. He means for the gathering today, for we are here today. How should we relate to this exploration right now on the guide? So, I mean, are we making proposals, or because some people already read through this and we are reading again together. So I think maybe what I connect to is that maybe if we go, I don't know, into breakouts and talk about some specific parts, and so what are the framing for this exploration right now? So I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was doing this assuming that we hadn't already all read and understood this. So I was just making sure that we all have the same foundation. So we can do one more vote. Again, thumbs up if you want me to continue doing this exploration, or give me a heart if you actually would rather, again, move on and do the breakout where we can talk about this section in groups. So. Still getting mostly thumbs up, so I apologize for those people who are feeling like this might be redundant, but bear with me. I'll try to explain it in a way that maybe is more exciting for people who have already read this. So you might still learn something new.
What I think it is interesting is to hear the thoughts behind the document, because when we read the document, it's like you cannot translate all the thinking behind. So what I'm appreciating is listening to the thinking behind.
That was exactly my intention here. Is, I've put in a lot of time writing this, but this is not mine. This is ours. So what I want to unpack during this exploration with all of you is all my biases. My goal is to just puke them out as best as I can. So one, that they can be challenged if they're ineffective. But two, also help you get an understanding of where I came from when I created this. Not I created this, but anyway, where I came from when I'm editing this document and putting it together. So that was kind of my intention here. And also, please, like throughout the rest of this journey, challenge every aspect of this. It is version 0.8, so there's not even a 1 at the beginning. So this is really meant to go through the ringer of our collective intelligence. Okay, so I'll just keep flowing really quick. Let's try to get this done in the next 10 minutes so that we're not being too overwhelmed. Okay, governance is broken up into two major categories, at least this is how I see it. We have sense making and decision making. So sense making is how we expand the realm of possibilities. Decision making is how we collapse that wave of infinite possibilities down to a single point and take action. So that's kind of the two polarities of what we're doing here. So we have some places to do sense making. So for example, we've launched the Seeds Forum. So this is an incentivized place because we want to compensate people for showing up and giving their wisdom. So this is about to actually be launched, where getting all those upvotes and downvotes and stuff in the forum will actually build your reputation. This has another point of building reputation, that it's a lot harder for bots to come up with intelligent stuff to say in the forum in order to get upvotes. So this helps, further classify who's a real human and not, and help them build reputation that way. And there's other co-learning spaces, i.e. This one's not added yet. I don't know what's up with that. Nope, Renaissance Mix. Here we go. Let's rename it for what it is now. So we have some co-learning places. Many of you have already attended the academy, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to get into that. Cool. So now we have decision-making tools. We have trust tokens. That's one. We do need to evolve some others. And when we get into the governance section, we're going to have a lot of fun there. But right now, trust tokens is the only token that we have right now to signal how we want to decide and collapse that infinite wave. Gratitude token is a new one actually being launched. That's technically a decision-making tool, because what it's saying is we have a pool of money and we want to decide where that pool of money is going. And we can use gratitude to signal where that goes. The same thing is true of trust tokens. What it's doing is it's saying we have a pool of resources that we're stewarding. Where do we send them? How do we decide where to send them? So this is what governance is kind of about. It's like, how do we decide? We have some really cool stuff coming. For example, liquid democracy is about to get launched, and I'll explain why that's really relevant to all of us here soon. We have weighted voting. So weighted voting is something that's, so liquid democracy, sorry, is just that someone could choose somebody else to represent them. So same one with our representative democracies today, where we kind of vote for Bob to represent myself, even though he doesn't. The same is true here. So liquid democracy is really nice because it allows us to give our voice to different people who we want to represent us on different topics. So what Seeds can do is every topic can be broken into its own governance category. So we can say within a region, we have a different topic for local food. We have a different topic for housing. We have a different topic for healthcare, right? So proposals for each one of those categories are their separate governance topic. And me as a citizen of that region, I could say, well, I really trust Sue to take care of the housing conversation. So I'm going to delegate all my voice to Sue for housing. And I really want Bob to manage me for all the food stuff. So I'm going to delegate my voice for food. But I really care about economics. I'm going to hold on to my voice for economics and participate there. So that's the power of liquid democracies that allows, wisdom and influence to flow very organically throughout a system so that people don't have to be bogged down by things they don't care about. Weighted voting is also something that's novel that Seeds is doing that it's still a very lively experiment. Where in democracy today, it's very binary. You basically get yay or nay. Weighted voting allows us to be able to, say that I'm 10% for something or I'm 100% against something. You get to put more weight behind it. Further, we also get to distribute out voice more fairly, I believe, but less equally. Because the reality is Seeds is an opt-in system. It's not something that imposes itself on a particular area. So I don't think it's fair or equitable to give somebody who just joined Seeds the same amount of voice as somebody whose entire livelihood is dependent on it. So one of the design and governance criteria, I know I'm going down a weird rabbit hole here, bear with me, is that our governance system, we want people to have the same amount of voice as it's impacting on their lives. So the greater impact it's going to have on your life, the greater voice I think you ought to have. And I think that's where, fair and balanced is. If every person in the system, it impacts them exactly the same, then they ought to have the same amount of voice. And that's kind of true of our, nation states today. When everyone's forced into the same nation state, it's almost as if everyone has the same impact on, governance decisions. Okay, but anyway, we'll get more into all of that on the governance section. But either way, so I'm just framing this because these are different tools. So you can imagine now that I've introduced a couple of them, there's a lot of different ways that we can start up-leveling and evolving how democracy actually works. Another major tool that we have to work with, which is what we're going to get into really deeply here, is the contribution categories and contribution scores. So this is how we can, these are systemic levers within our economy for changing different incentive structures. So what I really love is the organization one, since it's pretty clear. What we have is economy, community, and biosphere, or people, planet, prosperity. But what do these things mean? That's going to be one of our explorations here in Renaissance Explorers. What does it actually mean for an organization to contribute to the biosphere? What does it actually mean for the organization to contribute to the economy or community? So we can start building out these contribution scores and tracking more information so that we can start rewiring the incentive structures in our economy. Same thing for individuals, like what does it mean to contribute to the community, etc. And again, this is so foundational to how we get to shift our economic systems, because then we get to consciously decide what is a contribution to society. And if we can track it, then we can reward it, which I think is nice. So yeah, this is where the universal earned income comes from. As you're participating, you're earning it, you're contributing to society, then you get to earn an income through the harvest. I think this is probably addressing the universal basic income problem that's coming up as automation starts replacing a lot of jobs and people are not able to continue to work in the same old systems, which I actually think is a net benefit for humanity, because a lot of those jobs, like if a robot could be doing that job, then why is a human doing it? That seems life sucking. But what we do need is economic systems that can still provide for people to meet their basic needs and probably thrive as well. So that's where the universal earned income and the harvest can fit in there nicely. People are participating with society, then they can ideally and hopefully, and this is what we can do here, meet all of their needs doing so. All right, some of this is a little bit deeper, so I'll let you guys read it. We have economic simulators, so when we get into the financial side, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this, running some experiments and helping us decide what are the go live parameters. So I'll get into that in a second. Yeah, so we have a bunch of different tools and plugins for people to accept payments now. We just launched these, which is really awesome. Cool. That's it. All right. Last but not least, what does winning the game look like? At least for me, is when all humans within our civilization are able to fully embody the regenerative ikigai, and society kind of encourages, compensates, and supports that endeavor. So that's kind of what I think is, for summing it up. And I want to be able to drink from rivers again. That's just a big part of my life. Cool. I'll pause there. And any thoughts, feedback, reflections before we move on? I kind of did that in short time.
One comment on winning the game. So since this is an infinite game, so no one ever wins the game, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't be infinite. So it's like a purpose. It's something we have in the horizon. We are always following that, but we never quite get there, because there will always be a new human coming to the system and trying to learn the game and trying to, with the possibilities to change the rules. So that's the purpose that drives us, but it's going to change definitely, because it's an infinite game, right?
Yeah, semantics, but English is fun. So we could say winning is a constant state. We never won the game, but we can shift from a winning to losing. So, as long as our rivers are drinkable, then we're winning. But once they go from drinkable to undrinkable, well, now we're losing again. So it can go on forever. English, it's fun like that. Any other thoughts on the introductory tools? Actually, hold on. What are we doing? The next thing we're doing here is we're breaking out anyway. So cool.
Mikey, if I may, a question before we break out.
Sure can.
Great. So, and forgive my framing of the question. There's lots of gaps for me because I haven't been that closely involved. But a question around the UEI. And the framing of the question is a place like South Africa where there are many unemployed people and the numbers growing. And I'm interested in a UEI for people who may not necessarily have access to the technology you've just described, but they will very happily go and, like you mentioned earlier, clean up a river, for example. So are there discussion groups or are there working parties or whatever looking at how we involve people in the game of seeds without understanding the full technology stack you just ran through now?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this, where I mentioned it's our job to abstract away the complexity. Like we, as explorers of here, as architects of this game, it's our job to fully understand how all of the back end works. And as storytellers, make it simple enough that they can engage with it. So all we want to be able to do is tell them is go plant trees and the system's going to pay you to do it. They're like, oh, cool. I can plant trees instead of local food systems and I can get paid to do it. That's all I need to know. And I click a button on my phone and I can buy food with this. Like, there you go. You know, so it's our job to make it as simple as possible for people to participate, but we need to know the complexities of the system and how it's working. That's my number one, endeavor with the Renaissance explorers is we can't have a decentralized system where 5 or 7 people understand how it works. We need hundreds of people to deeply understand how the system works for it to actually be decentralized. Otherwise, it's just decentralized technologically, but it's not decentralized in all the real reasons of that word and what it means. So anyway, it's our job to understand the complexities of it. So that's the entire, why this is a master's course, and we're going to get into some really deep stuff because it's our role to understand that.
Can I add just something to that? So what I like to see is that the seeds currency is the simple thing that we can say to some person that this is your major tool to get on board of this new game, to this new economic, because if we talk about all these moving parts and people just, whoa, but if you talk about the way society works right now with taxes, with, forms that you have to fill, and you try to explain that to a person that's new to this planet, you're not going to make it anyway. So you say, you just use this money here and you're fine, So the seeds currency maybe is this initial grounding point that you can just, okay, you can use this and it's regenerative and it's connected to, and it's incentivizing you to be regenerative. So use this. And then once you maybe have a bracer with a QR code, you don't even need a mobile phone, but you're using this currency, so this is the entry point. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that's also the design point for seeds anyway. We had a lot of, I love doing things complicated. You guys might not have noticed that about me. But we chose seeds because it was designed for simplicity. It's what people are already accustomed to. So it looks and feels like the US dollar, or at least it will right now. It looks and feels like a speculative asset. So these are things that people in our culture are already accustomed to. It looks and feels like Bitcoin today. And that's already got a lot of adoption. People understand that narrative. Oh yeah, I buy this, dollar go up. Yay, this is something I want. Okay, and then after go live, it looks and feels like a dollar. Cool, yeah, I take this and I spend it to buy something. So that's very boring to me. I don't think that's the most beautiful instantiation of how we could build new economies, but I think it's necessary to serve as a bridge so that people can still participate in the system and using tools that are familiar with them. So I think that's also something for us to always keep in mind. That's a limit to how far we can go, is we still have to understand people are going to be coming from old systems and how they're designed. This is one of my biggest, concerns with things like the resource-based economy, Venus Project, and all these really awesome ideas that if we could just push a big reset button and do it all over again, how would we design it? I think that's a wonderful exploration to come up with novel ideas, but I don't think it's practical because we don't have a big reset button and we're taking people who are already accustomed to different systems and we're needing to bridge them over into new ones. So I think we have to have a lot of bridge tools so that people can still participate in a way that's familiar with them. Also why we do voting that looks like voting, so anyway, just food for thought there. What we're going to do, there's 30 of us. I want us to be able to start getting to know each other a little bit more and for people to actually be able to speak and engage. So what I'm thinking is let's break out into about 6 different breakout rooms. There'll be 5 people per group. And you can use this space to share about anything that we just covered right now. So how the current constitution's design, game guide's design, the current tools, any wisdom that we thought of going through this, anything you might want to share in your group. Just, it's open session, so discuss whatever comes up, whatever you're inspired to discuss. Will be about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we can come back in each group, pick one person from your group to kind of represent your group and share what went in there. So we can harvest it, and then we'll move on with the rest of the session. Cool, and it's gonna assign automatically, so you're just gonna find some random people to go play with. So I will see you all back in about 7 minutes. Do I get assigned to a room? Is that how it works? Yeah, this is a group, right? Nope, nope, doesn't assign me. Cool, what group do I want to join? This one looks like it's smaller.
Another 90 days.
Awesome.
Ya, yo necesito hablar ahorita.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Wow, I got the all-star team. Reiki came into our group. Thanks.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try to do a whole lot less talking in this group. So what do you guys got?
I'll throw a question out if I may, and it has to do with the writing that I'm doing, which is not around seeds specifically, but I think it could be very helpful. And the question has to do with credibility, or it's not credibility, but legitimacy, sorry, of the seed system. And I'm talking about in the scale of the global economy. So in other words, let's carry on with that analogy earlier. We were talking about cleaning up a river. If I got a hold of a team of people here, and they were cleaning up the river, did a brilliant job for it, and they got seeds, they were rewarded for it, how does that translate into bread on the table for them? And once we can get that story crystallized, how do we scale that so that, you know, things like the Sustainable Development Goals and so on take on a story like seeds, the functionality of seeds, the bread on the table? You know, are there discussions going on around the legitimacy of seeds on the global scale, or are we starting off very small, keeping it just a game at this stage with the intention of, like a Trojan horse, you growing it into the global economy? I'm just curious about, maybe Reiki, even you personally, where do you position seeds in the scheme of all the other stuff going on right now?
Can I tell you how we're dealing with that in our community right now?
Please.
So we have a liquidity pool. So we're paying people in seeds for the stuff, but when they need to cash out, we tell them, hold your seeds for as long as you can, you know, because they're going up. But when you need food on the table, we have seeds. But like the project we're doing right now is regenerative ag. So we're planting food forests in the community. So they have food and but like, you know, rent and medicine and stuff like that don't take seeds right now. The liquidity pool is the key, and we're doing that at a local level. And there's this organization called Dow Universe that's providing a liquidity pool for us as well, and it's been amazing. So when I do need seeds, I do need to cash out seeds and I don't have enough in my personal account, they've been helping me out. So I think that's really going to be the key, is how, you know.
And can you give some ideas as to who's seeding the liquidity pool? You know, is it micro donations that are coming in from the people involved in the community, or is there one large investor, or how have you approached that?
Well, what I've been doing is selling seeds from the grant to create the liquidity pool. But then I met with the Dow Universe guys and they're like, well, you don't really need to do that. Or do you want to do that? I'm like, no, I don't. I want to keep my seeds. And they're like, well, they pledged to support me. Basically, they pledged to give seeds when we needed it. And that's been the most important thing to full adoption for me in this local community.
Fabulous. I love that. So one of the things I'm saying is that for any of this stuff to work, there must be flow between the three primary players in society, which is public, private, and plural being the grassroots stuff. And what you've just described is a beautiful flow from, I presume it's private, or it's a company that I think is putting money into your liquidity thing. So now it's a case of how do you do the same from a government level, from rather than funding public works directly, create a flow into your seeds liquidity pool. Beautiful.
So what we're doing right now is creating a local DAO. So we're using the DHO technology, and it will, I actually met with the mayor yesterday. I'm having a meeting with him tomorrow. But what the goal would be is to get everyone that wants to be part of our local DAO has one vote, and people can propose projects, like the mayor was talking about, he wants to do a kids sports program. And I'm like, well, you can propose that to the DAO, Mr. Mayor, and people can vote on it. And he's actually really interested. He's like, he can't wait to go meet with me again, which is like super adorable because he's kind of a dick. No one really likes him.
He's trapped in his current system. So
but the cool thing is that public, private, it doesn't matter. Like, it's kind of a shadow government over an overlay government over what's already going on. Like, he's getting government funding, he's spending it for the town. But there's a bunch of, I live in a highly, it's a diverse neighborhood because we've got the local indigenous population. We've got a lot of extranjeros, lots of expats that live here. And so now all those people get the even vote, and the people that are going to be funding the DAO mostly are the extranjeros and the expats and the business owners that aren't actually paying taxes. So now they can go and give money to this DAO, and we all get to decide where the money goes. So, but the people that are working for the government get the same vote as the local level person. I think it's going to be amazing. And we're funding it with different things. We're funding it with local currency, we're funding it with seeds, and we're funding it with other cryptos. So it's not just a seeds fully funded endeavor. There's also a local liquidity pool. Like, we just got 150,000 quetzales to put into the liquidity pool that we're just managing at a local level to help the people here. Can I talk? We have 2 minutes. Can I talk about restorative justice? That's the one thing I really want to see happen. My experience in the ecosystem is that we need some way to challenge when things happen with other people in the ecosystem and with decisions being made. Like, we had an experience where a lot of people's contracts were just canceled in a meeting in Haifa. And that seemed a little weird because we had been voted in for a 3-month contract, and it got voted out by a few people, made a decision. It wasn't done through the system that it was created. But to be able to say, hey, we don't think that's right. Can we challenge this, make an amendment to the Constitution? This whole part of the justice system has not been written out in the game guide or the Constitution. So that's where I'm really passionate about playing here in the outer circle of the explorers.
So it's 2 awesome things. We need to have someone to share that, but I'm assuming, Carly, you're probably the best suited to share our harvest from this group. So yeah, I think it's great to plant the restorative justice. I think that's definitely something that we can get into when we get to the governance side of all of this. And it's the part that's most open right now because I think it's going to be requiring the most, collaborative and collective energy going into designing such a system.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm getting collaborators. I've been finding some really professional people in the field. I'm bringing them in. I'm like on it, man. This is my baby. Cool. I think we got to go back.
Well, only not enough of us got to talk, but anyway, see you all on the other side.
Got lost somewhere.
Okay, so before we dive into that, just one quick thing on the rest of the session here. So we're gonna do a little harvest, and then right after that, we're gonna go over some
Right, it
questions.
seems that you are muted, or is it me?
No, I am not muted. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, harvest, we'll go over some key quests. We'll talk about the constitutional guardians and exploration groups. So all of this will take 10 minutes at most to run through. So what we can do right now is let's do about 10 minutes of this harvest from each one of the groups. And then we can end on our 90-minute mark. So that means each person, you have about a minute and a half to share what you guys talked about. So I don't know if you guys remember your breakout room numbers, but we'll give it a go anyway. So if you're part of room 1, or actually we'll just do popcorn. If you feel like you want to share, unmute yourself, start sharing, because I doubt you guys know your rooms.
Or maybe raise your hands on Zoom, then we can have an ordered list.
There you go. Good call. If you're offered to do the harvest for your group, just put your hand up and then we'll just go in order. So while everyone else is putting your hand up, Apostle, take it away.
So we were in breakout room number 5 with Julio and Jao and
For the
Nicholas.
sake of efficiency, don't bother saying
Sure.
who was part of your group. Just
Okay, we talked about 2 things. One is that the document right now has a very limited capacity of actually discussing different topics. It's just a limitation of the Google Docs. And we talked earlier with Julio in the core outer space team to have a discourse space where we could like have long conversations on the topics, and that we could set this up very quickly and be live this week in order to actually start that process. And the other thing that we talked about was that the seeds is now tied to the US dollar, and maybe we could start having the conversation, should the two be tied or not? Or should they be tied, for example, to a kilo of tomatoes? For example, Daya proposed 10 seeds for 1 kilo of tomatoes. And that's all.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Let's definitely get into that, how we value things, and we'll get into that in the financial section. I think that'll be a really good one. There's a lot of different ideas about pegging and stuff. So also a quick response to the discourse space. Fantastic, we can do that. Also, the Seeds Forum is pretty well running right now. And then we could also start building our reputation and having it stored on chain and showing the other citizens what we're discussing and kind of keeping it all very transparent and out there and using our own tools. So I'm kind of biased towards us actually just engaging in the passport now. But either way, Miguel, I think you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. I was not able to participate in the breakout room because of technical problems, which happens many times with that function. So I just wanted very shortly to put out my 2 seats. Going to the very beginning of the game guide, I'm one of the people who propose a different framing than game. And I just wanted to say 1-2 sentences to that. Because all the problems we are facing in our today's world are coming from an old state of consciousness which created all these problems, whether it's food or pollution or governance or social problems, whatever, etc., etc. It's all coming from that old state of consciousness. So the solution, so to say, is an evolution in consciousness. And that's what I feel is also Seeds about. And I also would really put that in words and framing out there, because that opens many more possibilities than to define it as a game. So that's my 2 seats. Thank you very much for listening, and I will pass it on to the next person.
I believe that will be me then. We mostly talked about if game was the right word for the whole guide. For the whole principle. We had a little discussion about that, and it was on the one side, I was also saying, if it's all about playing the game, then the ones who don't know the game but are really good for the world won't be rewarded in this ideal state when seeds get fully integrated. But also on a lower stage, you shouldn't have to know the game in order to be rewarded. That was the one side, and the other side is how game supports play, and play is very natural. That's how you enjoy what you're doing, what we used to call work, and which is a less joyful word. And how how this concept of play is supposed to be the way we look at it, and because of that, game is a nice word. That's the discussion that we were having. We didn't have a specific answer, but I still like the word game, but also find it important that we include the people that are not playing it.
Are you done, Bart?
Yes.
Okay.
Our group was discussing sorry, discussing about it was beautiful, about the part that should people like understand the background of this whole game, or I can't remember, somebody said like, no, we should just introduce them and like this is the new money system and you just use it. But like, should we be using it like habitually as we are using current money system and not like thinking behind it? Or is that like, again, degrading our somehow potential? Or should it be like introductory to understand, to all of us to understand what we are doing and how everything works behind? So Guy had a very interesting point on that. So if you would like to share, but that's it.
No, I just said that I know that I can check the source code of open source software, but I don't necessarily do it. In fact, I don't do it because I can't understand it. But I know that somebody else can understand it and can check it out. Whereas the current financial system is just like massively complicated on purpose so that people can't understand it. So like, I don't necessarily think we need to be able to understand how all this works, or a user doesn't need to be able to understand how all this works. We need to understand it. But I lost the thread. But
maybe we have to have constitutional kind of guardians or people who are connected to this space and knows about the game, and they can explain the game in simple words or how it works for people.
Mm-hmm.
I see Carly also has her hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to go. My battery might die and electricity's out here in Guatemala, but Michael, can you preface what you had said about how to are you available to explain your question and then I can do the answer?
Keep it brief. I mean, it's very similar to what has just been said. How do you reward people who aren't necessarily gaining reputation by interacting in the forum, by being, involved with the passport itself? There's lots of people here in South Africa and many places in the world who want to go and do some work in exchange for a slice of bread on the table at the end of the evening. And there's a disconnect for me about how we make that happen. How does somebody earn reputation and seeds if they're not actively engaged on the phone? And Carly, you had some great examples.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is we're starting our own DAO, our own local DAO that's funded by the people, and then everyone gets a vote. I live in a community that's like half indigenous and half expats. And I'm talking to the mayor right now too, so that we have a local DAO. People can propose their own projects. It doesn't have to just be funded by seeds. I'm talking with a company or a guy that's working on a Central American DAO called Aldea, and he's in the Catalyst project. And I got him coming in to put a proposal for the seeds DAO so that we could be multi-funded local stuff. And then the other piece of that is the liquidity fund. So there's DAO Universe is the Ministry of Seeds basically right now. And they've actually been helping me out to provide liquidity to projects here so people feel safe accepting seeds for their work, knowing that if they ever need to cash out for their rent or things that they need to pay for that seeds are not accepted yet, they feel confident that that's a possibility. The other thing that we brought up in the circle is the thing that I'm most passionate about is creating a restorative or transformational justice system within the Constitution, in the way that if there's something that happens, we have a way to challenge a decision or a way something went down and adjust the Constitution, or person to person, supported by a community tribunal. Like if something seems to be out of justice, that there's a way to resolve differences and things within the system. So those are the two things that we came up with. That's all I got.
I'd like to quickly respond to that. The the idea is that people will also be able to use seeds without knowing all the rules. So if you just do a transaction by buying and selling something with seeds, you are already getting scores, you know. And if you invite someone and say, oh, come join seeds, and you invite them, you are already getting scores. So people can participate just by doing the small day-to-day daily actions that they are kind of already doing, and we incentivize them to, if they are spreading the word in a sense, they are already kind of playing the game. So we want to make the game so accessible, they can play it very easily without even having to use the many technical tools that we provide. So
I'm going to jump in. So the thing that comes up, yeah, I have two feelings about the word game. I don't like it on the one hand, but I understand the spirit behind it, and I like that. For a lot of people working in it, you know, life is not a game, and the way they make a living and provide for their families is not a game, and it's really difficult for them. And I think that we might alienate that a little bit with the word, but I think it's a matter of semantics. The other thing I want to point out is that where the current financial system is basically in its own bubble and unrealistic and built on all sorts of devices that can't even be understood. Seeds, I feel, is going to be built on ecology and the very real world systems that we all depend upon. And so on a fundamental level, it can be understood that way. And I feel like as we grow it all, if we can take examples from nature and systems in nature, I think that'll be really advantageous to us as well. That's all I have to say.
There was one more person with their hand up and then it went away. Jan, is that you?
Yeah, I'll just quickly share them. We had our group meeting and it was interesting to recognize that we had people coming like 5 days ago, just entered on seats, and people that were here 1 year ago sharing that they only had like the Constitution to read and it was like 60 pages, and how much complex the system is right now. And yeah, I think that stood out for me in our conversation.
Thank you, Jan. Justin, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, as I was listening there, like the comment, it kind of came up in our group, but not really. But I just wanted to say, like, there's like this quality. I use the word like transpersonal sovereignty, but it's something like there's a lot of, how I say this, the game, whether it's a game or a field or it's whatever the name may be, like the thing that I find is really important in navigating the space, like this space, like this ecosystem, but also this civilization, this transition time is like deeply focusing on your individual needs and what, like your bliss, following your bliss kind of vibe, but also focusing on the problems and challenges that you as an individual are facing, and doing so with the perspective of like the transpersonal. So doing everything you do in highest service to the whole, but doing it just based on what you have right in front of you right now is a really good way that I'm navigating this space. Because if I get too caught up on the possibilities of things that could be going on, you know, even 2 degrees away from me, I'm not actually here now taking the thing in. And I think that is how you navigate, is how I found to be able to come in like relationship with my own compass, like my own inner navigation system about what is more right or less right for me, and with like a trust that the opportunities to serve humanity or my community or whatever it may be will come. And so when we think about problems or names or words or these things, they're super important. But if you don't know who you are here yet and how you walk through this space, you're kind of just setting yourself up for destruction. It's like the externalities are great that way. Trying to solve someone else's thing too far away from you. That's just my feeling.
And that's exactly why we start the week off with the inner exploration to ground that. Thanks, Justin. All right, so I'm not going to be able to do it, but I'm going to try to get us out of here on time because I'm trying to be punctual with all of our lives here. That was beautiful. Cool, key quests. So what are some of the big things that we're wanting to deliver here as part of the outer space circle? So using the governance system ourselves to trial it out, learn, and get our own funding. So we want to fund ourselves here. So part of that exploration is using the Seeds governance system to run a campaign and potentially alliance for the Renaissance explorers, and use both of them to fund our new do that we're setting up here. And then create with the citizens when we get to the governance section to upgrade the current governance system. So there's still been a lot of tensions and feedback that the current governance system could be evolved. And those are very practical and grounded justifications. My sensing is that we needed to go through the Renaissance explorers to fully understand what role that governance system was playing before we went about tweaking it. It's kind of like before you start trying to fix the engine of a car, maybe you should know how the car works. That was a terrible analogy, but anyway. So anyway, we're going to use the governance system ourselves. We'll experience it, and then afterwards we can create with the citizens after we've gone through that experience ourselves, and use both that learned experience and all the wisdom from current citizens to try to come up with some alternatives and propose them. And then we'll use the governance system too to come up with the referenda to propose any changes. And citizens, of course, have to ratify any changes that we might come up with. Then we move on to the governance organization system, and this will be part of us creating our own do, and then getting further funding, requesting funding from HIFA, because we're meeting some of HIFA deliverables, one of them being creating the game guide. So HIFA is being paid to do that, so HIFA would potentially, this is what we're going to explore, pay us to do that. So we'll putting together proposals and pitch them to HIFA and get some funding. If all of these things are pretty successful, the end result of our key quests is a sustainable organization where we've got our own funding, and we're getting funding from Seeds. Maybe we continue to get funding from HIFA and providing services to this ecosystem. So what I would love to see as a really powerful pathways for people who are feeling completely fulfilled. This is your ikigai and you want to continue this beyond just the however many sessions we have here. It would be really beautiful to create a sustainable organization where members here can take up roles and continue contributing in Seeds and getting their needs met in doing so. And if we're not able to do that, then we know our system's broken, and then we'll go back and fix our system until we can do that, right? So that's our role here, is let's make this endeavor sustainable for ourselves as well. Another key quest is the Planetarium regional boundaries. So right now we fleshed out version 0.5, not even 1.0 of individual and organization contribution scores. But we haven't even started at all with the regional ones. The only thing that's part of a regional contribution score is how many members are part of that region. So the aggregate total of the contribution score of individuals in that region is the only thing that gives a region a contribution score, which is how much a region gets for funding. But I think it'll be really important for us to come up with some regional boundaries and other things that are important, such as regional regeneration, to bake into that contribution score. So that's another big thing that's a takeaway. And then when we get into the economic system, it's our kind of quest here, our opportunity to set what the economic triggers are for go live. So we have this go live point that most of you are familiar with. It's supposed to be triggered once we hit certain milestones and landmarks and certain tipping points. Those aren't set yet. Those aren't defined. So part of our role here will be actually to define them. How many organizations need to be on board? What's our growth rate? What's the price of seeds? Those types of things. So we'll get into that, and we can run some simulations and find out what level is a healthy enough economy for us to flip that switch. So these are some of the key quests we'll be taking on. And of course, we're going to uncover more as we go, but I'm just trying to help frame, what is the deliverables and the takeaway of our exploration together. And I'm going to run through this a little bit quicker because of the time constraint here. So constitutional guardians, what are these things? These are people their role is to guard the Constitution. But more technically, they're going to be people who have 15 out of 21 signing authority to block certain changes that the citizens might want to push through. Or if there's new code being added, they're the ones that manually have to sign to say, yes, this code is in line with the Constitution. So these are people that are going to be voted in by the citizens. The citizens get to choose who they want to be their guardians, and you can be removed by the citizens if you're not, doing the will of the citizens. But this is something that members of this group are probably going to be most amped to fill, because our goal here is really understanding the game, and constitutional guardians are going to be those who really understand the game. So if citizens in the future come up with something that we know would fundamentally break the game, it's our job to say like, hey, by the way, this is going to fundamentally break the game, so we're going to block this because it's unconstitutional. And if the citizens don't like that, then they can kick us out of our posts, put in some new guardians that are going to do what they want them to do, and then push that thing through anyway. But it's still our job to, defend it as best as possible. And then I was mentioning liquid democracy before. It's also going to be our opportunity to promote ourselves as people that might others can delegate their voice to us. So as new citizens show up, they get a voice. They don't really want to participate in governance because they don't have the time, the will, or whatever. We're going to be promoting ourselves as people who understand the game. We have a different perspective at the game, and then people can delegate their voice to different Renaissance explorers. So that's something I think we could be actively doing to continue to improve the governance system. Yeah, that's probably good to cover that. So this is, again, what is our individual trajectory here? So not only maybe we could create a do, but our individual trajectory is we could become, constitutional guardians and hold more voice, that people might be delegating their voice to us because we've gone through this exploration together. Cool. Any questions on the key quests or the constitutional guardians before we hit our last talking point? Am I making sense? Yeah, pretty good. Cool. Then the very last thing. So we have 4 major sections of the game guide. We have the organization section, the governance section, finance, and economics. I kind of pointed out some of our key landmarks. They fit into each one of these sections as well. So we have some exploration groups where we're going to have breakouts during the week. These could be ad hoc sessions. Pick the time that whatever suits best of the members falling into that. We'll use next session to actually break out into these groups, so we don't need to do that just yet, just introducing them. So the organization section, each group has one editor, and this is the person who's literally making edits to the game guide, right? So as a lot of people are putting in comments and feedback, this is the person that's collating all those comments, they're integrating the feedback, they're asking questions, and then they're actually updating each one of these sections. By default, I'm pulling the editor for the whole document until someone else comes up as editor for each one of these groups, and I can pass that authority on to whoever comes up with the editor for each one of the exploration groups. And also each one of these groups are going to be tasked with one of those big milestones. So the organization group is going to be setting up the do and proposing to the do to get funding. Governance group is going to be making campaigns to Seeds itself and going through the governance of Seeds. The finance group is going to be the one diving into the go live metrics. And what that actually means, the economics group is going to be doing a lot of things with economics, but one of the first things is that boundaries and the thrivability thresholds that we're talking about. But of course, these groups could do a lot more than that. And then these main calls that we're getting on is when the groups actually come together, they share their wisdom. Because these 90-minute sessions with 30 of us, it's not practical or reasonable for us to get as deep as we need to in order to really start taking these things on. So this will be stuff that happens during the week, and then these larger sessions is where we come together, cohere, and we learn together. But ideally, we're breaking out into these smaller groups to continue to create and craft together in our groups during the week. And that is everything. So for next
Right, one question regarding the groups. So just to mention that these themes that are written in the slides are just suggestions, and we can create as many exploration groups we want. We can break out into maybe 10 groups or 6 groups or how many groups as we want. So the groups will form around these 4 categories that are the themes of the guide, but they can explore and go dive deep on any of the topics in the guide. So if you want to do a group on voting and a group on DHOs or any of those themes, we can all self-organize around these groups and then go to an editor and help getting the proposal to the guide. So the idea of the group, the objective of the group is to come up with a proposal to change the guide. So that's the exploration group is for, right? Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, for next week, most of you already read the game guide. Awesome. If you haven't, just read section 0, that part that we were going over. And optional is to read the Codex, colloquially known, formerly known as the handbook, but Codex is cooler. Props to Anna, which we'll share in the Discord chat if you don't already have it. So not a whole lot of takeaways this week, but within the Codex, there is some suggested reading material, and there's some videos and some documentaries and stuff. So if you are feeling like you want to dive deeper, there's some cool stuff to check out in there to help you start framing what we're learning here. And that is everything. So I will pause again. We can have just 2 minutes in case there's any thoughts, questions, comments, whatever you guys have. I think developers 11, you unmuted yourself. Is that, yep, perfect. Take it away.
A quick question here. I'm nowhere to find the game, but I'm not sure about the Codex. Where to find it?
Anna, do you mind just sharing that into the group real quick? Oh, easy. There it is. Any other thoughts?
Thank you.
Or questions? Cool.
If Anna wants to speak about storytelling tomorrow or not, or just kind of presencing that so everyone knows to come on Wednesday to storytelling. I'm not sure what that is, but I just wanted to say that.
Yes, tomorrow's call is about storytelling. Anna, do you want to announce anything for that?
Sorry, my internet is a little jumpy here, so can you repeat that?
I was just wondering if you had anything to announce for the storytelling call for folks who might be attending that tomorrow.
No, not really. Just come. It'll be great.
All right. But what I would love to end this with is one of you sharing some really beautiful wisdom that you're holding on to right now. So if someone's holding something, a piece of inspiration that they'd like to share with us, just feel free to unmute yourself and we can leave it with that. I know somebody's got something. That's too many of us.
I've got a recent realization that it's really beautiful when there is divisive statements, if we can see the space in between them, which is why I put that poll.is in the chat. I think it's amazing to explore what people's emerging opinions are, and then to see where the alignment and the connections are. So it was just that to really love the spicy stuff. Because there's so many different ways to think of a lot of this, and there's so much to consider. So some enjoyment in that, some joy, some play.
That is beautiful. We'll leave it at that. I'll see all you epic humans in the next spaces. Feel free to unmute yourself and say bye. That's always fun.
Ciao. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice.